Marie Osmond has spent more than half a century wrapped in the glow of American entertainment, a voice woven into childhood memories, family living rooms, and generations who found comfort in the tenderness of songs like Paper Roses. To millions, she was the smiling girl who appeared graceful and optimistic despite the pressures of fame, the graceful star who carried elegance so effortlessly it felt almost timeless. Rising from the legendary Osmond family, Marie did more than survive the enormous shadow of fame surrounding her brothers. She created a place entirely her own. Soft-spoken yet strong, gentle yet resilient, she became a symbol of endurance disguised as sweetness. But behind that familiar smile lived a woman carrying pain far heavier than the world ever realized. The pressure to maintain perfection became overwhelming. Beneath the applause were years of depression, emotional exhaustion, impossible expectations, and the devastating grief of losing her son. An agony that deeply affected her life in ways the public rarely saw. The industry celebrated her sparkle while she continued facing private emotional struggles away from the spotlight. Again and again, life tested her faith, her identity, and the hope she fought hard to protect. And now, at 66, many fans continue to reflect on the personal hardships and family challenges Marie has faced throughout her life and career. If Marie Osmond's journey has ever touched your life, take a moment to show your support for a woman who transformed suffering into strength and heartbreak into compassion. Marie Osmond's early life was shaped heavily by fame and public expectations. Long before she fully understood the meaning of celebrity, she had already become part of the entertainment world. At only 3 years old, while other children were building imaginary worlds with dolls and crayons, Marie stood beneath bright television lights, rehearsed smiles crossing a face still too young to fully understand the demands of performance. Much of her childhood became centered around television appearances, rehearsals, and the growing success of the Osmond family. Born in 1959 as the only daughter among 9 children, Marie was not simply raised inside a famous family. She grew up within a highly disciplined entertainment environment. Every movement, every note, every public appearance carried expectation. In the Osmond household, talent, discipline, and performance were strongly emphasized from an early age. Before most children learned multiplication tables or rode bicycles through quiet neighborhoods, Marie was memorizing scripts, rehearsing harmonies, and traveling through the demanding rhythm of the entertainment industry. Her first major television appearance came in 1962 on The Andy Williams Show, a moment that became the beginning of a lifetime spent in front of audiences. Her parents believed discipline created success. Every child in the family was expected to practice instruments, develop stage presence, and contribute to the family's growing career. There was little time for a traditional childhood. Marie later spoke publicly about the pressures that came with growing up in such a high-profile environment. At just 11 years old, Marie traveled to Japan for a commercial shoot that became one of the most frightening experiences of her childhood. During the trip, the boat she was traveling on overturned, leaving her physically shaken and severely dehydrated before rescue arrived. Marie later recalled the incident as deeply traumatic. According to later interviews, she returned to work relatively quickly despite still recovering physically and emotionally. Marie later shared that she struggled with the pressure of maintaining appearances and continuing performances even during difficult moments. That experience reinforced the intense pressure surrounding her early career. Vulnerability was rarely encouraged inside such a demanding entertainment environment. In her memoir, Behind the Smile, Marie described the emotional emptiness hidden beneath her polished public image, the loneliness, the confusion, and the exhaustion that came from maintaining success at such a young age. America adored the bright, cheerful girl standing beside her famous brothers, but Marie later shared that she often struggled privately with stress and emotional pressure. Her voice filled television studios, yet she later described finding it difficult to openly express her own emotions and personal needs. Slowly, Marie learned to prioritize performance and responsibility above herself. She later said that balancing fame, expectations, and personal well-being became increasingly difficult. Yet somehow, she endured. The pressure that might have overwhelmed someone else instead helped build a strong emotional resilience the same resilience that would later help her navigate public scrutiny, broken relationships, depression, and the devastating loss of her son. But the deeper Marie entered fame, the more demanding the industry became. By 15, she had become the centerpiece of Donnie and Marie, one of the biggest primetime programs in America. To millions watching at home, Marie appeared radiant, wholesome, and effortlessly charming. But behind the scenes, she was also beginning to struggle with body image pressures and intense expectations surrounding appearance. Standing beside glamorous celebrities like Farrah Fawcett, Jaclyn Smith, and Raquel Welch left Marie feeling insecure about how she looked. She later admitted that she often felt out of place within the image-driven culture of television. Comments about her weight and appearance deeply affected her confidence. At the time, Marie weighed barely 103 pounds. Still, fear of rejection and pressure to maintain a certain image led her toward extreme dieting habits. She later described using restrictive diets involving lemon juice, cayenne pepper, and maple syrup while preparing for television appearances. At times, she avoided eating before tapings while trying to fit into demanding wardrobe expectations. What began as an attempt to control her image gradually became far more serious. By her early 20s, Marie Osmond was publicly speaking about her struggles with anorexia and bulimia, battles shaped by years of pressure, perfectionism, and the belief that much of her value was connected to appearance and public approval. For decades, Marie Osmond maintained a polished television image while privately dealing with emotional struggles connected to fame, body image, and public pressure. But in a deeply emotional 2018 interview, she spoke more openly about how fame and body shaming affected her self-esteem and emotional well-being. "They made me feel like I wasn't good enough," she admitted. At barely 103 pounds, Marie struggled with restrictive eating habits during the height of her television career. She later described food and weight as areas where she felt a sense of control during periods of emotional stress. Behind the bright lights and cheerful performances was a young woman quietly struggling with emotional exhaustion and pressure. The pain went deeper than Hollywood expectations. In a 2019 appearance on The Talk, Marie spoke publicly about childhood physical abuse and how those experiences affected her confidence and self-image. As a little girl, she often believed something was wrong with her. That insecurity followed her into adulthood, contributing to a belief that love, approval, and acceptance had to be earned through perfection. Her struggles with weight were not simply about appearance. They were closely tied to years of emotional pressure, insecurity, and the demands of public life. That mindset contributed to years of emotional struggle and self-doubt. Every criticism deepened the shame she already carried. Comments about appearance and public expectations affected her confidence for years. Yet Marie kept performing. She kept smiling for audiences who had little understanding of the emotional exhaustion she was experiencing privately. To the world, she looked like America's sweetheart. In reality, she was navigating constant emotional pressure inside an industry where appearance and public image carried enormous weight. Her story was far more complicated than the glamorous image many people imagined. Still, she refused to completely give up. Somewhere beneath the pressure and heartbreak, Marie kept trying to regain a sense of stability and self-worth despite years of public scrutiny. Even when fame judged her harshly, she continued moving forward. And that determination would shape the next chapter of her life: love. Though Marie spent years singing about romance, her own search for lasting love included both meaningful relationships and painful disappointments. In the late 1970s, while millions admired her on television, she quietly experienced several personal relationships away from the spotlight. One of her early emotional connections was with Michael McDonald of the Doobie Brothers. She admired his calm personality and musical talent, though their relationship ultimately remained brief. Later came Andy Gibb, whose kindness left a lasting impression on her. Their relationship was short-lived, affected in part by his growing struggles with addiction and the pressures surrounding fame. Marie later spoke sympathetically about the difficulties he faced during that period of his life. Then came David Cassidy, another teen idol struggling with the pressures of celebrity life. From the outside, they appeared perfect together, young, famous, and admired by fans. But privately, Both were dealing with demanding personal and professional pressures that made maintaining a stable relationship difficult. Marie later described the relationship as trying to hold on to something meaningful while life around them was moving too quickly. By 1982, emotionally exhausted and longing for peace, Marie married Steve Craig, believing she had finally found the normal, grounded life she had spent years hoping to find. At just 22 years old, Marie Osmond longed for something fame had never fully given her: peace. After years spent beneath relentless studio lights and public expectations, she dreamed of building a quieter life centered on love, family, and stability. When she married Steve Craig in 1982, she believed she had finally found relief from the chaos that had followed her since childhood. Soon, they welcomed a son, and for a brief moment, Marie embraced the possibility of a more balanced and private life. The spotlight faded into the background. Motherhood gave her purpose. She later described that period as one of the happiest times in her early adult life. However, the marriage eventually faced serious challenges. Only 3 years later, the marriage ended. Their divorce in 1985 affected Marie deeply, both personally and emotionally. The heartbreak unfolded publicly, forcing her to navigate private grief under intense media attention. Marie later admitted that the separation left her feeling intense guilt and sadness. She didn't just feel like she had failed as a wife. She also struggled emotionally as a mother during that difficult period. For someone who had long dealt with pressure surrounding expectations, self-worth, and perfectionism, the divorce became another painful emotional setback. Still searching for stability, Marie married Brian Blosil in 1986. Together, they built a large, blended family with 8 children, and from the outside, their life appeared warm, successful, and complete. To fans watching from afar, Marie finally seemed to have everything she had spent years searching for: a husband, children, and a home centered around family life. But behind closed doors, the relationship gradually faced growing emotional and personal challenges. The pressures of motherhood, career demands, and years of emotional exhaustion placed increasing strain on their marriage over time. Marie rarely exposed those struggles publicly. She kept smiling, kept performing, kept maintaining a positive public image despite the emotional difficulties she was experiencing privately. "I was exhausted from acting like everything was okay," she later confessed, because it wasn't. By 2007, after more than 2 decades together, Marie and Brian divorced. The ending devastated her. It was not simply the loss of a marriage, but another deeply painful emotional setback after years spent trying to build lasting stability and happiness. Marie later spoke openly about continuing to struggle emotionally in the aftermath of the divorce. And yet, through every disappointment, one thing in Marie never weakened: her devotion to her children. That love soon faced the greatest test of her life. To the public, Marie Osmond still appeared glamorous, successful, and resilient. But behind the applause was a woman privately struggling with serious emotional and mental health challenges. By 1999, after giving birth to her 7th child, Matthew Blosil, Marie found herself experiencing severe emotional distress that went far beyond exhaustion. She later said she no longer felt like herself during that period. In an emotional interview with TV Guide, she revealed the painful reality of those years. Her body hurt constantly. She struggled to move. She later described feeling overwhelmed by frightening thoughts and emotions. What many dismissed as ordinary baby blues had become severe postpartum depression. The illness became increasingly severe, and Marie later shared that there were moments when she felt emotionally disconnected and overwhelmed. At one point, she left home for several days while her children stayed with a babysitter. She later described that period as one of confusion, fear, and emotional exhaustion. When she finally returned, doctors confirmed she was suffering from clinical depression. Marie had survived fame, public criticism, eating disorders, and failed relationships, but nothing had prepared her for the serious mental health struggles that followed childbirth. For the first time in years, the woman who had spent much of her life caring for others found herself struggling intensely with her own mental health. Years later, Marie Osmond spoke openly about how serious that period had become. During a deeply emotional 2010 conversation with Oprah Winfrey, she admitted there were moments when depression deeply affected her thinking and emotional stability. She recalled driving alone and questioning her sense of purpose and self-worth. "That's what depression does," she explained softly. "It convinces you that your pain is permanent and your absence wouldn't matter." Behind the famous smile and polished image was a woman facing thoughts and emotions she later described as deeply distressing. As if the internal battle were not already overwhelming, public scrutiny only intensified the experience. In 2006, tabloids spread rumors claiming Marie had attempted to take her own life after she was hospitalized unexpectedly. The headlines spread quickly, leading to widespread public speculation that ignored later medical explanations. Her representatives later clarified that the incident was caused by a severe reaction to medication that caused her to lose consciousness, not an intentional act of self-harm. But by then, the experience had already become emotionally painful and deeply public. The incident also highlighted the stigma and misunderstanding surrounding mental health discussions at the time, especially involving public figures. Yet Marie refused to let shame silence her. Instead of retreating from the spotlight, she chose honesty. She began speaking openly about depression, anxiety, and postpartum struggles, hoping other women would feel less alone in their experiences. She understood there were countless mothers struggling privately with emotional and mental health challenges, afraid to admit they needed help. Marie used her experiences to start conversations few public figures openly discussed at the time. Still, years of stress and exhaustion continued affecting her physical and emotional health. In 2007, while competing on Dancing with the Stars, Marie collapsed live on national television moments after performing a samba routine. Millions watched in shock as she fainted during the judges' comments. Paramedics rushed onto the stage while the incident quickly drew concern from viewers and media outlets. Yet even in that frightening moment, Marie tried to ease public concern with humor. After recovering, she jokingly told reporters, "I guess I danced myself right into the floor." But behind the laughter was a difficult reality. Her emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion had become increasingly visible. Through every struggle, one thing remained constant: her love for her children. Motherhood became both her greatest challenge and her greatest reason to keep moving forward. Marie once said that being a mother changes you in ways nothing else can, while also giving you strength you never imagined possible. That belief carried her through years of depression, public judgment, and periods of emotional loneliness while raising 8 children. Slowly, her struggle transformed into something deeper than survival. It became a journey toward healing. She learned to ask for help instead of suffering silently. She learned to protect her mental health with the same care she once reserved only for others. And she leaned heavily on faith whenever life became too overwhelming to carry alone. For years, Hollywood had presented Marie Osmond with a highly polished public image of grace, composure, and optimism. But her vulnerability ultimately became far more powerful than perfection ever could. By speaking honestly about depression and emotional pain, Marie gave strength to countless women who felt trapped by shame, to mothers hiding tears behind smiles, to daughters convinced they had to be flawless to deserve love. She showed them that healing often begins when open conversations replace silence, shame, and isolation. This chapter of Marie's life was never about celebrity glamour. It was about a woman deeply affected by years of emotional and mental health struggles and somehow finding the strength to continue rebuilding her life. Again and again, she continued trying to move forward despite enormous emotional challenges. But even after surviving depression, heartbreak, and years of emotional exhaustion, an even greater tragedy was waiting ahead. Because in 2010, Marie Osmond faced the kind of pain no parent should ever endure: the devastating loss of her son, Michael Blosil. And in that moment, the woman who had spent her entire life surviving encountered a level of grief that profoundly affected her emotionally and personally. On a cold night in February 2010, Marie Osmond was preparing to step onto the stage with her brother, Donnie Osmond, when she noticed a missed call from her 18-year-old son, Michael Blosil. It seemed like such a small moment, the kind most people assume can always wait until later. But she would later learn it was the last call she would ever receive from him. Minutes afterward, another call arrived, this time from the coroner's office. Michael had fallen from the 8th floor of his Los Angeles apartment building. No drugs, no alcohol. Authorities later confirmed that he had been struggling with severe emotional and mental health difficulties. For Marie, the news did not feel real. She later described the experience as emotionally devastating and impossible to fully process at first. Michael had struggled with depression for years, but he had promised her he would never hurt himself. And she believed him. Like so many families facing mental health challenges, Marie later spoke about how difficult emotional suffering can sometimes be for loved ones to fully recognize, even when they are trying to help. Later, she discovered a note revealing the emotional pain he had been carrying. He had been bullied. He felt hopeless. And in Marie's words, the letter became a painful reflection of the struggles he had been experiencing privately. Marie later spoke openly about the intense grief and guilt she experienced after losing her son. On the talk, Marie admitted through tears that Michael never fully revealed how deeply he was hurting. "If I had known, maybe I could have helped," she said. As a mother of 8, she had spent much of her life trying to protect her children from pain. But this loss affected her profoundly, both emotionally and personally. She stopped eating regularly. She struggled with sleep. Grief left her emotionally overwhelmed and disconnected from daily life. And yet, only days later, Marie returned to the stage. Many could not understand how she found the strength to perform so soon after losing her son. But Marie later explained that work became a way to maintain structure and continue moving forward emotionally. "If I stayed home," she said, "I would have sat in a room crying all day." Behind every smile during those performances was a grieving mother trying to continue functioning through overwhelming loss. In a later interview with Oprah Winfrey, Marie admitted that her grief sometimes led to periods of deep emotional distress and hopelessness. But she also explained something important. It was never truly about wanting death. It was about desperately wanting relief from overwhelming emotional pain. The aftermath devastated the entire family. Michael's siblings mourned in silence, while Marie faced an overwhelming grief that deeply affected everyone close to him. But slowly, through heartbreak and loss, she chose to transform pain into purpose. Instead of hiding from the tragedy, Marie began speaking publicly about depression, bullying, and mental health awareness. She used her platform not for sympathy, but to encourage parents to listen more carefully, to ask difficult questions, and to better recognize signs of emotional distress. Her voice, once known mainly for music, became something else entirely, a voice for families facing emotional and mental health struggles. And though time moved forward, the loss of Michael remained deeply meaningful and painful for the family. In 2022, during one of her Las Vegas performances, Marie Osmond paused to honor her late son, Michael Blosel. As she began singing, her voice trembled with emotion. Halfway through the song, she became visibly overwhelmed. The theater fell silent. Audience members stood with tears in their eyes, witnessing something far deeper than entertainment. It was not simply a concert anymore. It was a mother honoring the memory of her son through music. A year later, on the 13th anniversary of Michael's death, Marie shared an emotional message online. "Not a single day passes that I don't think about him. Grief never disappears. You simply learn how to carry it." And she did carry it. The grief remained an important and lasting part of her life. But through that suffering, something inside Marie changed. Friends and fans began noticing a deeper tenderness in her presence, a quiet strength shaped by years of personal hardship. She became someone many people connected with because of her openness about grief, depression, and emotional struggles. The woman, once known mainly for sparkling smiles and cheerful songs, gradually transformed into a symbol of resilience, honesty, and compassion. Marie began speaking openly about grief, depression, and emotional healing, reminding people that even celebrities experience profound loss and emotional pain. Even strong families can be deeply affected by heartbreak and tragedy. Yet somehow, she continued moving forward. Emotionally affected by years of hardship, but still grounded in compassion and grace. Her story was no longer simply about fame. It became a story about continuing to honor her son's memory after his passing and refusing to let conversations about grief and mental health disappear into silence. Through her advocacy and vulnerability, Michael's memory continued influencing the causes and conversations she cared deeply about. But additional personal losses would follow in the years ahead. The years after Michael's death brought a series of difficult family losses. Behind the warm smile America remembered from the 1970s was a woman continuing to cope with profound grief and emotional hardship. In 2004, Marie lost her beloved mother, Olive Osmond, the woman she often described as her emotional anchor. Olive had been more than a parent. She was Marie's strongest source of comfort and support throughout much of her life. After her passing, Marie admitted she felt emotionally lost and deeply affected by the loss. Then, only 3 years later, another painful loss arrived. In 2007, her father, George Osmond, also passed away. Losing both parents within such a short span left Marie deeply affected emotionally. Despite being a mother herself and a beloved public figure, she later admitted those losses made her feel emotionally vulnerable again, as though an important source of stability had disappeared from her life. And the heartbreak continued. In 2018, tragedy struck the family once more with the sudden death of one of her grandchildren. Marie chose to keep most details private, protecting her family from further public attention during an already painful period. But during an interview, her trembling voice revealed more than words ever could. "Loss never becomes easier," she quietly admitted. "You just become more familiar with carrying it." And in her eyes, people could finally sense the emotional impact those losses had on her. Then came another difficult chapter. In 2022, Marie Osmond watched her daughter Jessica Blozell endure deep personal loss after the tragic death of her husband, Chris Mortensen, who lost his life in an act of street violence. The suddenness of it deeply affected the family. For Marie, the pain carried a painful familiarity. She was no longer only grieving her own losses. She was now watching her child experience a similar kind of grief that had once deeply affected her own life. It became one loss following another, a mother helplessly witnessing another member of her family experience profound grief. And additional challenges followed. Around the same period, Marie's older brother, Verl Osmond, suffered a serious stroke. One of the original Osmond brothers and a quiet pillar of the family's musical legacy, Verl's declining health became another difficult reminder of the health challenges many families face over time. Marie remained beside her family through it all, supporting everyone while continuing to manage her own emotional stress privately. But perhaps another major personal loss came in early 2025. Her beloved brother Wayne Osmond passed away at 73 following complications from a stroke. Wayne had been far more than a sibling. He was part of the foundation of her life. A trusted friend, a musical partner, and one of the few people who truly understood the unusual experience of growing up inside the Osmond dynasty. Marie later described his death as another giant hole in her heart. Fans around the world mourned alongside her because Wayne had become part of their lives too, a symbol of a family that once filled television screens with music, warmth, and joy. Each loss seemed to mark the gradual passing of a generation closely connected to the Osmond legacy. Behind every funeral and every goodbye was the painful realization that the vibrant world the Osmonds once built together was slowly changing with time. Yet even while grieving privately, Marie continued stepping into the public eye with grace. Interviews, performances, and appearances continued, though audiences could now see something deeper in her presence. The bright teenage star from decades earlier had evolved into a woman shaped by decades of personal challenges and resilience. And still, she continued focusing on family, faith, and work despite the losses. In a 2023 interview, Marie quietly reflected, "We all carry pain, but the heart is stronger than we think." Those words were not inspirational slogans. They were reflections shaped by years of personal experience. Despite everything life had taken from her, Marie kept showing up. For her children, for her audience, and for the memory of the people she loved. Performing was no longer simply entertainment. It became a way to stay connected to the people and experiences that shaped her life. By 2025, Marie Osmond represented more than celebrity success. She had become someone widely recognized for enduring extraordinary personal challenges. A mother who buried a son, a daughter who lost both parents, a sister grieving the gradual loss of family members over time, and a grandmother still focusing on family and connection despite years of personal loss. Through every hardship, one belief remained important to her: continuing forward even during difficult periods of life. At 65, while many stars quietly disappear from public life, Marie Osmond continues forward with a different kind of presence, one built not only on fame, but on resilience and experience. Far from the chaos of Hollywood, Marie has created a peaceful life in St. George, where her sprawling desert home has become more than a mansion. It is a peaceful home, shaped by years of personal experience and family memories. Living there since 1999, long before many of the tragedies that would later affect her life, Marie slowly turned the house into a reflection of the life she had built over decades. Complete with a private pool, tennis court, and professional recording studio, the estate still honors her lifelong connection to music. But its true beauty lies in the warmth she poured into it herself. Every room carries memories connected to family experiences across different periods of her life. Surrounded by red mountains and quiet sunsets, Marie now embraces a gentler rhythm of life. She spends time walking beneath the desert sky, riding bikes with her grandchildren, and laughing about trying to keep up with their endless energy. "Being a grandmother is my favorite role," she once admitted with genuine joy. Her focus on health is no longer about appearance or fame. It is about staying strong enough to remain active and present for the people closest to her. Over the years, rumors about cosmetic procedures have followed her, but Marie has always responded with honesty and grace. She once said the lines on her face are simply evidence of the experiences, challenges, and memories she had lived through. Though time has changed her appearance, it never diminished the spirit audiences have loved for decades. Compassionate, radiant, and remarkably resilient. And perhaps most unexpectedly, later in life, Marie also found renewed happiness in her personal relationships. In 2011, after nearly 3 decades apart, Marie Osmond found herself standing beside a man she once believed she would never reconnect with romantically: Steve Craig, her very first husband. Their original marriage in 1982 had lasted only 3 years before life pulled them in separate directions. Marie's world became consumed by fame, motherhood, heartbreak, and survival, while Steve quietly built a life far away from the glare of celebrity. Time changed them both. They lived different lives, went through very different life experiences, and endured different losses. Yet somehow, after all the years and all the distance, they reconnected later in life. When they chose to remarry, it was not a dramatic Hollywood reunion. It was something more private and meaningful to them personally. They intentionally married on May 4th, the birthday shared by Marie's beloved mother, Olive Osmond, and her late son, Michael Blazel. For Marie, the date carried deep personal meaning. She later admitted it was her way of honoring the memory of loved ones who were no longer with her during an important moment in her life. Their second marriage was not built on youthful fantasy or public spectacle. It was built on understanding, forgiveness, and the quiet comfort that can come when two people have already experienced many of life's challenges. Marie once said they no longer cared about proving their love to the world. What mattered now was peace. After decades of personal difficulties, she had finally found a relationship rooted not only in excitement, but also in trust, history, and emotional stability. Together, they traveled, laughed, and embraced the simple moments most people overlook until life teaches them to value those moments more deeply over time. Their relationship endured not because their past was perfect, but because they had experienced enough hardship to better understand what long-term companionship truly meant. Then, just when many believed Marie's story had settled into quiet happiness, she surprised the public once again. Not through music or television, but through a personal decision about inheritance and family values that generated significant public discussion. Marie publicly announced that she would not leave her estimated fortune to her children. To many, the statement sounded surprising. Critics accused her of being harsh or detached. But Marie stood firmly behind her choice. She explained that she believed excessive financial dependence could limit personal growth, discipline, and independence. Her decision was never rooted in lack of love. In fact, it came from the opposite. Marie believed the greatest gift a parent could give was not money, but independence. Having grown up inside the demanding Osmond family, where every child worked from an early age, she understood the value of effort and responsibility. She did not want her children defined by inheritance. She wanted them to develop confidence through their own experiences and work, and build a sense of independence and responsibility. She remained deeply involved in their lives as a mother and grandmother, offering guidance, support, and love. But she also believed true character is built over time, not simply handed over. So who is Marie Osmond today, after decades of fame, grief, reinvention, and survival? She is no longer simply a television icon or music legend. She has become someone many people relate to beyond her celebrity career. A woman who endured extraordinary personal hardships while continuing to move forward with compassion and resilience. She still walks onto stages, not because she needs applause, but because music remains one of the most meaningful ways she expresses herself. She still tells her story openly, because somewhere out there, another struggling mother, another grieving daughter, or someone going through a difficult period in life may hear her words and feel less alone. And even now, inside the quiet stillness of her Utah home, Marie continues carrying the memory of Michael with her. She lights candles for him. She sings songs he loved. She continues honoring his memory through music, prayer, and moments of reflection. Once, she admitted to a friend that when life becomes too heavy to stand, she prays. And when prayer is not enough, she focuses on supporting and loving the people around her as best she can. Marie Osmond no longer lives to prove herself. Not to critics, not to audiences, not even to her own past. She has already experienced profound personal loss and hardship throughout her life. Yet through every challenge, she continued moving forward. Her life was never a fairy tale. It was something far more meaningful. Proof that even after devastating loss, people can still find meaning, connection, and healing. That healing and personal growth are still possible after difficult experiences. And perhaps that is Marie's greatest legacy. Not the fame, not the fortune, not even the music, but the example she leaves behind. Strength, faith, and compassion despite the hardships she experienced throughout her life.